Well, I've been talking and drinking with my Uncle Bob, and oh boy, do I have a treat for you. Since Bob was the oldest sibling, he had more contact with Carol than anyone else living. Even better, he remembered Grandma when she was alive. I struck quite the gold mine with him, learned some very enlightening and disturbing things. I'll start with this anecdote, as it's probably the most lighthearted of all. So, Uncle Bob is one of those DIY guys. If he's not at work, he's in his garage. He was planing some wood with his garage door wide open when Carol rolled up, so he couldn't very well kill the lights and pretend not to be home. He assumed Carol was there to hit him up for money when she popped out of the car, all smiles. She got a dog. I've mentioned that Carol is a dog person. She usually takes better care of them than children, and that she actually pays other, more competent people to take care of them, and Bob thought, sure, this would just be a semi-normal visit. Carol would suck up some narcissistic supply and leave. A dog, huh? What breed? Carol shrugged. Some kind of hound. She just went and picked them up. Bob knew instantly he had to tread with caution. This was probably some kind of theft or illegal trade that she'd partaken in without second thought. She'd just gone and picked him up. That's what you did with puppies in the wild, didn't you? Bob had a brain ache for that one. Not just that Carol was ignorant enough to believe dogs just roam free for the taking in the United States, but that it automatically fell to him to sort it out. He asked to see the puppy. Carol gladly obliged, opening the car's rear passenger door and frightening the bear cub huddled between the seats. Bob said he had an epiphany that moment, that no matter what low he estimated for her behavior, Carol would always manage to outdo him. Bob told her it was a goddamn bear cub. Carol laughed and said, no, it wasn't. It was a cute little puppy. He'd come right up to her and licked her hands, so she decided to take him home. Wasn't that nicer than that scary old park? Bob was looking at the back seat. The cub had been sick all over and was currently shivering. Bob was no vet, but he thought the cub was in some kind of shock and that Carol was potentially in a lot of trouble. And he knew who she'd try to drag down with her. Bob said she had to put it back. Carol made a face. Why? It would probably just die. She would take it home and feed it more candy bars because it liked them so much. Bob restrained himself from pointing out that her behavior would probably have killed a real puppy already, and just told her that taking an animal from a federal park was illegal and carried a hefty fine. Carol got sly and said she wouldn't tell if he wouldn't. Bob said it probably had a tracker in it, and the park rangers would probably tell it had gone off the grid. Massive bluff on his part, but it worked. Carol's eyes got wide and she asked if they could just cut the tracker out. Bob said no. It's probably in its digestive system or something. They should probably just put it back in the park and the rangers would write it off as a blip in the system. Using Carol's own ignorance on her is probably the most satisfying method of dealing with her bullshit, but my uncle warned me, they can bite you in the ass if you're not careful. Carol decided to return the cub. Bob drove because Carol is a menace on wheels, and directed them to the spot where she'd found the cub. It was so off the beaten path that Bob was surprised she hadn't taken out the tires driving to it. When asked what the hell she'd been doing out so far, Carol said she'd been looking for a pretty place to have a picnic. Yeah. When they rolled up on the little field where she'd first found the cub, Bob said he felt so sad when he picked that little body up and felt it shivering. He knew it might die, and if it lived, it would probably grow up to be a problem bear. But he also knew if he brought it to the ranger station that Carol would just throw him under the bus, somehow wriggling out of it like she always did. No, he planned to call in an anonymous tip that he'd seen some tourists messing with the bear cub when Carol was safely out of his hair. Carol stayed in the car while he picked the cub out of the back. He tried to hold it gently and make reassuring noises as he carried it out into the open, looking for a safe little hollow to put it in. And that's when he noticed the cub's mother on the far side of the clearing, 5 feet of shaggy Urson rage, looking right at him. It broke into a gallop. Bob said his life flashed before his eyes in that moment. He dropped the cub, not his proudest moment, and just ran. The sound of the bear lumbering after him awoke all sorts of ancestral fears in his muscles. He ran faster than he's probably ever run to the car, where his sister had locked all the doors. Bob, operating on some kind of ultra-autopilot, just fell flat and rolled under the car. The bear ran into the car so hard it rocked on its springs. Carol just kept screaming uselessly. The bear fished under the car for Bob. It had the longest claws he'd ever seen in his life. They looked like they could rip open human flesh like wrapping paper. They left deep furrows in the ground as it scratched after him. Bob joked that he regretted not shitting himself in that moment. The smell would probably have convinced the bear he was dead. He scooted over to the far side so its claws couldn't reach him. Carol continued to do nothing useful. The bear swiped at the passenger door, prompting Carol to shift to the driver's side. It lumbered around to the other side of the car, sniffing. Bob moved out of range again. Carol did the first useful thing she'd done that day and laid on the horn. The bear was startled. Carol leaned on that horn like there was someone going the speed limit in front of her. The bear lingered for a moment and then ambled off to the tree line. Bob waited for a few minutes after it vanished from sight, going deaf from all the honking, before wriggling out from under the car. He told Carol to unlock the door. Carol said no. What if the bear came back? Bob took one look at that tree line, then told Carol if she didn't unlock the door, he would use a rock to smash the window in. Well, that got her to comply in a hurry. As Bob got in, he asked her why she'd locked all the doors before he could get to safety. Carol confusedly replied that she thought the tracker would stop the bear from attacking humans. And that, Bob said, is why you don't rely on Carol's ignorance as a failsafe. As he stopped at his house and got out, Carol actually had the nerve to ask him about paying for the damage to her car. Bob told her to tell the auto shop that the government was responsible. She'd probably get it for free. Carol drove off happy, and Bob went in and took some aspirin. Bob said he heard about a problem bear in the park not too long after. It kept attacking tourists in the area until finally the rangers had to euthanize it. Bob said he felt really guilty about that, certain that it was the mother bear they had screwed over. When Carol got a new Airedale puppy around the same time, Bob snuck into her house while she was out and grabbed it, took it to a no-kill shelter 5 counties over. It didn't help with the guilt, he said, but it was cathartic.